Sam, it's your boy Pop Pop. Lots going on. Lots going on in the world. Everybody has a finger on the button. So, everybody has a finger on the button. If you're there, hit the like and let me know that you're there. This is Hanging Out with Pop Pop. So, I got my peppermint candy. Peppermint is good for your digestion. And I've got my Helen Smith approved shirt on. So, this video is Helen Smith safe. So the April 8th eclipse is looming. All sorts of cities and jurisdictions are are telling us to get ready and prepare for April the 8th. So, and it doesn't take much to prepare. I do a trick that my mother taught me. Whenever she had an empty bleach bottle, she filled it up with water, and she didn't rinse the bottle out first. And you can only do it with regular chlorine bleach. You can't use the perfume stuff or anything like that. And you fill the bottle up, and there's just enough bleach residue to keep that water potable for a good long time. And then when you finally want to drink it, you just pour it over a Brita filter. But it's cheaper to make your own filter. And the way you do that is you get a $6 or $9 packet of food grade charcoal. You can get that right off of Amazon. Get a $2 packet of number 2 Melita coffee filters. You put a heaping tablespoon of that charcoal in the Melita filter. You can filter all the water you want. Now, when you first pour the water over it, it's going to have a little bit of charcoal dust, so you don't drink that water. But after the charcoal gets rinsed off, you can make a lot of water, a lot of clean water that way. And you can tell when the water is ionized, it'll have these little teeny bubbles. It'll have these little teeny bubbles in it. Hey Tuda, how are you? Tuda's in the house. So everybody has got their finger on the button. lot of great channels today. Had great stuff. Canadian Prepper, NY Prepper, New York Prepper, Full Spectrum Survival. His channel is always good. Luis Santiago of the Grand Supreme News Channel. So I'm just chilling. Mi mano derecha went to the store for me. So I had roast beef with fried onions and cheddar cheese over it. No bread and coleslaw that I made. Coleslaw is really easy. Just chop up some cabbage, chop up some carrot, chop up some onion, throw it in a container with some vinegar over top of it. Let that wilt for a couple hours in the refrigerator. Then you take it out, dump it in a strainer to get rid of the excess vinegar. Then you put black pepper and honey and mustard and mayonnaise or ranch dressing over it. And you got something. And cabbage is really good for you. Cabbage, it says God gave the leaves for the healing of the nations. Cabbage will heal your gut. If you have any stomach problems, cabbage will heal it. If you have any liver problems, you want to eat beets. And if you have any kidney problems, you want to drink celery juice or cranberry juice. Celery juice you don't want to overdo because you can over alkalinize your kidneys. It's like everything else, moderation is good, too much is not good. So there's supposed to be a big ass winter storm coming, and it's supposed to hit the whole 48 states in America, the continental US. It's supposed to be a big one. And somebody said that the storm out in the Pacific spelled out the numbers 1976. So they say it's going to be a repeat of whatever bad things happened in 1976. And the eclipse, when it comes over America on April the 8th, is going to hit 7 cities named Nineveh. So Nineveh was the city that God said he would wipe out in 40 days. And he sent the prophet Noah to tell Nineveh to repent. And Noah was really ticked off because they did. And Noah actually did not want the people to repent. He thought they should get what they deserve. But that's not the way our God is. God is a God of grace. And if you ask for mercy and you repent of all the evil, nasty things that you've done, he'll forgive you. So you got to forgive other people. You got to forgive other people for God to forgive you. So if you're there, give me a shout out. By all means, let me know what's up. What's up with you? So But a storm's coming. The eclipse is coming. Everybody says this stuff is biblical. The rapture is about to happen. The tribulation period is fast looming. This election is not going to make any difference because if you vote Republican, Antifa and BLM will go right back to burning cities down. And if you vote a Democrat, we're going to get more of the same that we have right now. So it's a lose-lose for America. I'm going to say that probably when this stuff hits the fan, I'm expecting Texas to secede from the United States of America, and they will probably make Donald Trump president of New Texas. Whatever you all think, Donald will not be president this time around. Prophecy has it that the next president of the U.S. has got to be a woman. So it'll either be Nikki Haley, that's why she's not giving up, or it'll be Michelle Obama, or even Oprah Winfrey. Be one of those three. Then Texas will secede. Texas has oil. Texas has cattle. Texas has their own power grid. And they have a lot of gold. So if Texas pulled out of the Union, they would actually be in better shape because they could close their border and then they could turn around and charge the leftover part of the United States. They could actually charge the rest of the United States for the Air Force bases and Army bases that are down in Texas. And Texas has a vast militia. And see, the progressives think that they're going to disarm us in America. That'll probably never happen in Texas. And the liberal arm wants a one-party system. And they're Fabian socialists, and they are desperate to push their plans through, which is to have everybody on the take, dependent on the system, everybody disarmed, can't go any place, in your 15-minute city. You're going to be eating bugs and drinking cockroach milk while the elites jet around the rest of the world. The John Kerrys jet around the rest of the world. Obama said he doesn't want anybody using air conditioning. They don't want you to use a gas stove. All of that good stuff. The the world that you young people are going to face after this election is going to have so many rules and regulations where you can't use a gas powered lawnmower in your city, you know, all of this stuff. You wait after the election is really going to hit the fan after the election. And there is no good solution to this whole mess. They've spent the country into oblivion. They've used up our fuel reserve or given away a lot of our reserve. They gave away 5 million barrels of the reserve to the Dragon country, which I believe they did as a payment on interest, because China always loans money to countries, and then when the country gets in trouble and can't pay the debt, China goes after what's called real property. Okay, so King is spelling out the N word. So I just reported that as hate speech. And you think you're being real smooth and real cool doing that. And you're an idiot, because there's no erasing that on the internet. So someday you'll go to look for a job. You'll go to look for a job or something, and you think you're a keyboard warrior or keyboard clown, and nobody's going to find you out. But you just typed in the N word on one of the most popular channels on the tube, and it'll come back and it'll bite you in the ass. You know, it won't immediately, but someday you'll go to buy a house or get a job, and they'll run, you know, everything, and they'll find out that you were the one who typed hate speech onto the internet, and you can't delete it. Even if you delete it and everything, you know. What's up, Hannah? What's where? Oh, in the Czech Republic. All right. I dated a girl who was Czech, and they got a lot of good food, like potato soup and stuff like that. And the lady was skinny as a rail and smoked cigarettes like a train. She smoked cigarettes like a train. But she was heavy duty. So I wonder what time frame you're in for it to be 1:30. 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. And that's cool. Time frame Czech Republic.
The time zone in Czechia is Central European Standard Time.
Oh, you're in Central European Time. So a lot's going on in Europe. Hey, James, how are you? So pretty formal calling me sir. How are you, sir? Oh, gosh. The body is not designed to be bedridden for 24/7. You okay? That's good. I prayed for everybody today. I was faithful. I prayed that God would guard and protect, guide and keep my YouTube family. So I'm always glad when you all have good news for me, because I have been faithful. And this world is getting crazy. You have to have your relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ. You have to have your physical fitness. You have to have some food and water put aside. You need to teach the young people, basic survival stuff like how to bandage a wound and all of that other stuff. I knew all that stuff when I was 8 years old. I knew how to sew my clothes and all that other stuff. Knew how to drive a car. We went to Delaware, and well, it was all the way back in 1967, I think. My father bought a sports car, and he would let me pull it up in the driveway and wash it and then back it out onto the street under penalty of DEATH. That car right now would be about a $70,000 car. And I wanted to drive that car, so I'll tell you, I washed that thing like every other day. And it was sleek and it was powerful. And I felt cool behind the wheel. A little kid with this great big American sports car. Oh, yeah. But my father would have KILLED'd me if I scratched it or backed it into something. But for me, it was worth it. Oh, boy. To get behind the wheel of that car. Yeah, I saw it. I already took care of that. They were spelling out the N word over and over and over again, as if that's going to shock me. Oh no! Oh no! I need a warm blanket and a cup of cocoa and a safe room and a coloring book. So, but I do have Pedro with me. I got Pedro, so I'm in good shape. Daddy. Yeah, Pedro, what's up? Daddy, say hi to the people for me. I just did, Pedro. Didn't you hear me? Oh, okay, Daddy. Yeah. Terry or Katrina got me, Pedro. When I was a kid, my parents sent me off to listening camp. And when I came home, my cat was gone and all my stuffed animals were thrown in the trash, you know. And I was like, gee, thanks. And so Pedro number one got put in the garbage. Now listening camp, I went there and they said, don't do anything unless we tell you. Don't even say anything. So I said, yes, sir. The guy said, did I tell you to say yes, sir? I said, no, sir. Did I tell you to say no, sir? No, sir. So what they did, they gave us these empty buckets. And whenever you did anything they didn't like, they put a little bit of water in the buckets. So you were just supposed to stand out there in the sun and not say anything. And like I said, even if you said yes, sir, they put a little bit more water in your bucket. Now you get a 5-gallon bucket times 6 pounds of water is 30 pounds a bucket. And you hold that up for 20 minutes. And by the time they let you put the bucket down, your arm's just like spaghetti. You can't even lift a cup of coffee or a Coca-Cola up to your mouth. And then we had to get down and duck walk. Duck walk is where you crouch down and you grab the back of your ankles and you walk around like ducks. And one kid wet the bed, and they took the mattress and the boy out into the open and hosed them both down with the hose in front of everybody. And breakfast was these beautiful, thick pancakes and eggs and sausage. But the deal was the older boys would take about 6 pancakes and leave us younger boys only like 1 pancake and a little bit of eggs and one or two pieces of sausage. So by the time I got back home, I was really thin. And the camp counselor should not have let that happen, because a lot of the food got wasted, thrown in the trash, while the younger little boys were starving. And the camp counselor, the one camp counselor, Steve, he always, my whole pictures of the trip to the camp was of Steve with 2 boys under his right arm and 2 boys under his left arm. And he would grab the boys and throw himself on a sofa or a bed with the boys on top of him, you know. And it occurred to me when I was going through my picture album, there's Steve with boys under his arms and boys on top of him. Just Steve with a pile of boys on top of him, little boys. So it struck me even back then that something wasn't quite right. But see, that was over half a century ago, and people didn't discuss that stuff. And it wasn't common knowledge. It wasn't public knowledge that there were people that were into that stuff. So that was my camp experience. And my family did the same thing to my father when he went into the hospital. They never intended for my father to come out of the hospital because when he went into the hospital, his cats roamed all around the house. Meow, 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 looking for my father. Room to room, the cats went, and it drove my sister crazy. And so rather than taking the 2 cats to the pound, and letting somebody else have the 2 cats, she took both cats to the vet and had them put to sleep, because they were inconvenient and an annoyance. And shame on that vet for doing that. The vet should have told them that he wasn't going to do that and to take the cats to at least take them to the pound. But the one cat was pretty funny. I didn't know it was a boy cat, and it was very effeminate. And it was a black cat with a white heart on its chest, and 4 white booties. And so I named him Musette after the cartoon. It turned out to be a boy. But he was funny. When he didn't like his cat food, he would smell the cat food, and then he would flop on the ground next to it, and he would paw the floor, crawling up to the food like it was some big deal, and a big Shakespearean tragedy that he didn't like the cat food. Very smart cat. He got a kidney infection, and the way he told my father about it was my father was gardening, and he had a great big white generic bag of peat moss, and the cat backed up to the peat moss bag and piddled on it while my father watched. And then my father noticed that the piddle was red instead of yellow like it was supposed to be. And he took the cat and he had its infection, taken care of. Very smart cat. The other cat I got from my father from the dump, he was a orange alley cat, Pumpkin. And when I was at the dump, dumping the garbage truck, he was standing on the pile of garbage and he saw my truck and he just booked for it. I mean, he booked for it, hopped in the cab, and he got on top of the passenger side seat. And when I looked over at him, he went, like, just try to take me out of this truck. And it didn't faze him a bit bouncing around in the garbage truck. But all I had to do was look over at him, and he would go, you know. And so he was smart too, because the end of the day, I was like, you gonna stay in the truck, or you gonna go home and eat? So he went from the garbage truck to my car. Same routine, sat on the driver's passenger side seat. And anytime I looked at him, he would go, like, I will cut you. I will cut you. So I figured, what better gift than the gift of love of a feral cat to my father? So I took him over to my father's house, and they were like two peas in a pod, man. The cat climbed up on my father's belly, and that was that. But anybody go up to my father in his easy chair, and the cat would go. So, very smart, both of them. Very smart cats. And so my sister had him put to sleep, and the family visited my father. He was on life support, and the technician looked at the family, and he took the air hose for the life support and he kinked it for a second, and the life support machine went blah, 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 blah. An alarm went off, and he looked at my family like, don't you all accidentally unplug the machine or step on the air hose. So after that, nobody visited my father, and they left him on a gurney. They didn't even put a sheet over my father because they said it was easier to work on him. I said, how are you working on him? You're just waiting for him to pass. And that's what they were doing. They weren't giving him any fluids or any medicine or anything. They were just waiting for the clock to tick down. So I went and visited my father for the last time. And I was patting his hand, telling him I loved him, which was very difficult, telling the person that used me like a punching bag and an ashtray that I loved him. God gave me the grace to do that. And he passed away at 11:38. And I called the family and I said, it's buck past 11:38. They said, thank you. Click. That was that. Their house was 2 blocks from the hospital. They didn't offer for me to come and stay, if I was upset or anything like that. So I opened up my can of Coke and my cheese crackers, and that was that. But when my father passed, it was like thousands of something went through me from the window and got my father and then passed back through me. And for a split second, all of us were like one. I can't describe it. any other way. It was like all of us were at the same point. And then they went back out the window with my father. And I had a long drive home in the dark, all creeped out and everything from the experience. The life support machine was still on, and it sounded like Darth Vader. And I couldn't stay in the room because my father had turned purple and blue. And with the machine pumping him up and all that, it was just too freaky. It was too freaky. And I left. I didn't even talk to anybody in the hospital. I just left. So, yeah. And then I don't even remember my father's burial for some reason. I seem to recall that it rained. And rain when somebody passes is good because people say when it rains, you know the person went to heaven. So I went back on a bright sunny day to visit my father's plot, and I had bought this really sexy. I always call it Lincoln. It was a Mercury Marquis X100. Great big huge fastbacks or with a, they call it a sports roof on a great big block long Mercury Marquis. And I was really wearing a really kick ass 3-piece suit. And I went to visit my father's gravesite. And this great big doo-doo fly went right from my nose and right up my nose into my sinuses. And so I had read about a lady who had a fly go up her nose and it laid a whole bunch of eggs. And she wrecked her car. When they did the autopsy, all of up here was full of these grub worms squirming around. So I panicked and I was going, trying to get the fly out of my sinuses down into my mouth where I could spit it out. And the people the next gravesite over were watching this man who got out of this great big block long Mercury, well dressed, and then getting ready to hock a lunger on somebody's grave, showing his disrespect. So when I got the fly into my mouth, I didn't want to spit it on the ground and have people think that I was disrespecting my father. So I ran back to the Mercury with my tie over my shoulder, threw the door open, and spit the fly into my coffee. It didn't occur to me to spit the fly on the ground and then wash my mouth out with the coffee. I spit the fly into my coffee cup. And then I didn't have anything to rinse my mouth out with. So I think I went to the drugstore at the Kmart next door and got some peroxide and gargled with some peroxide, if I recall. Peroxide will kill any germs. 3%. You don't want to get the strong stuff. You get that old cheap 3% peroxide and gargle with it. And I'm the better part of a century old. I got every single one of my teeth. Back before they had floss, I used to use white thread between my teeth to clean out the gook and floss and rinse with peroxide. Nobody told me about that. I just did it. Kept all my teeth. And I used Colgate. And I had one summer when I was working 2 jobs and going to college, working for 2 garbage companies, and my heart slowed down, and my heart would not beat quick. It just beat real slow, and I was really tired all the time. And I went to see the doctor. She put me right in the hospital. She said, "Oh my God." And then I was freaked out. And so I was in the hospital for the better part of a week as they were trying to get my heart to firm up and beat faster. And my father came and visited me, and he brought me Crest toothpaste. I said, "Well, Buck, I don't use Crest. I wanted Colgate." He said, "Well, Crest is better." I said, "Buck, I've always used Colgate." And you know that little bit of annoyance made my vitals on the screen get all crappy, and the nurse came in to see what was wrong. And so she made my father leave because I was getting all annoyed. I was like, "One thing I asked you to do, and you couldn't even do it right, you know." And so, because I don't like Crest always tastes slimy and mushy. Colgate is like minty fresh, and I like Colgate. So my brother visited me, and he gave me a shaving kit. And I opened up the shaving kit, and there were 2 McDonald's Big Macs in the shaving kit. I wasn't supposed to have them. So man, I opened up the shaving kit, and I was gulping down those Big Macs, pigging out, and all of a sudden the machine went blah, 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 like that. And my heart took a dump, and the people came in with the crash cart, and I almost offed myself by eating the 2 McDonald's Big Macs. But by the grace of God, I made it through. By the grace of God, I made it through. I didn't have insurance or anything, but I always used to have money in the bank. And if I had 10,000 bucks in the bank, I considered myself to be on the edge, to be poor. And I'll tell you, fam, when you got money set aside and you lose your job or something happens, it's very nice to have. And I went to work for this guy that hated white people. And I was only one of a couple people in the company that was Caucasian. And the guy called me to his office, and I stood in front of his desk while he was on the phone. And he had a bottle of gin or vodka always on the desk. He was an alcoholic. MD's in the house. "What's up, MD?" So he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, you told me to come to your office." He said, "Yeah, I told you to come to the office, not come in the office. Like, how dare you?" So he said, "Go back out into the hall. When I call you to come to the office, you come and you stand in the doorway by the water cooler, and then I will beckon you in." He said, "I'll beckon you in to come in and talk to me when I'm ready." And I told him, I said, "Well, why didn't you beckon this and get somebody else? I'm not a dog. I'm not a dog that's not even good enough to come and stand in your office, and I got to wait out in the hallway for you to beckon me in." So I said, "Beckon that, pal." And I got my stuff and I walked out, got in my car, and smoothed on out of there. So I was a pistol when I was young because I'd been abused by my father. And I learned that when people start to abuse you, they're going to keep on abusing you unless you put up for yourself. So, yeah, I went to work full time at the age of 14 and went to school. And I started to get big and bulky working on garbage trucks and working in gas stations. And when I was 15, I had the Cobra back and the guns and everything, you know. I was bulked out. And my father became afraid of me because he figured that if he put a cigarette out on me or went to push me down the stairs again, that I would come up and beat his ass, which I never ever. Well, the time he pushed me down the stairs and came and stood over top of me and almost beat me to DEATH, I told him, I said, when I recover, I said, both you and I are going to be on the news. So he probably took that to heart. And he beat me so bad that when he went upstairs, he had to have oxygen. My mother gave him oxygen. They never came to see if they had broken any of my bones pushing me down the stairs, you know. I always had bruises on me everywhere. You know, I had bought a new car at the garbage company, and I bought a new car, a real sexy Mercury Cougar XR7. And this guy at the garbage company, it was winter time. He climbed up on the trunk of the new car and piddled on the back window. And so my brand new Mercury had scratches on the trunk and frozen piddle on the back window. And so I told the guy, I said, I'm gonna pull over to a real remote road, and then I'm gonna beat the crap out of you. We had all gone to a shake and bake club down at Shepherd's Park, I think it was. All of us underage. And I had lots of money and I had a new car, even though I was a kid. I think I was like 18 or 17. And I always had a new car. I worked hard. And I would pull my car up behind my father's, like my car was going to eat his little car when I would visit. I didn't tell him that I was sleeping in the car. Sleeping in the car to save money and that kind of thing. So I pulled over to Avery Road behind the Rockville dump. I was so angry, I put the car in park while it was still moving. And the car sat there and danced for a little bit as I slammed it into park. I walked around and I yanked the passenger side door open. This is a brand new car now that's getting torn to bits. And there was another guy in the another garbage man in the front seat. I took the seat and I threw it forward, and the other guy went into the dash. And I reached in back and I grabbed the guy who peed on my car, and I pulled him out by the collar, and I went bam right in his nose and knocked him in the gutter. So everybody had been drinking, and it didn't occur to me that when you're good and drunk, nothing hurts. And man, that guy got over top of me, and he just worked on my left eye. That's the only thing he worked on was my left eye. And man, my eye got all bloody and swelled up and shut. And in order to save my life, I had a pair of cowboy boots on, Now I'm 17 years old at this point, and I'd been out of my parents' house for 2 years living on the streets with drug addicts and hookers and working on garbage trucks, and I didn't have a pretty life, I can tell you. But I didn't do drugs. No, I didn't let myself get into that. But I did drink. And so this guy was just working on me. I know he would have killed me. So I reached up with my cowboy boot and I kicked him right in the nose with the cowboy boot and broke his nose. And he broke my nose. It's still crooked. It's got a little piece of bone that sticks into it. So both of us came away with broken noses and my eye was swollen shut. I'm lying in the gutter with this guy on top of me. It was like the fight in Star Trek that Kirk had with O'Toole or whatever his name was. We both beat the crap out of each other and working off steam and had to go to work the next day. So I look up and I think this was an angel because he came out of nowhere. I looked up and there was a cop and the cop said, "Is there a problem, gentlemen?" And I said, "No, sir." And the cop said, "Well, why don't you get back in your fancy car and drive the hell out of here?" I said, "Yes, sir." So we both got into the car grumbling at each other. And they were brand new car with a scratched up trunk and pee on the back window and beer cans all over the dash and the floor and cigars and cigarettes crushed out in the carpet. And the car was really a mess. So I thought to myself that I said to myself, this cop is going to let me drive about 50 feet. Then he's going to turn the lights on, take all of us to jail. But God was merciful. He drove right around my car. You know, I guess he figured we had enough punishment. And that car did not last long, I can tell you. That car went from being a brand new car to being a pile of junk. I was driving down Route 29 into Silver Spring, into the ghetto part of Silver Spring. And way up North 29, a pigeon flew in front of the car. And then I didn't see it for miles and miles. I'm driving down 29 doing about 50 or 60 miles an hour. I get all the way down to 29 and the light at George Avenue. And the pigeon had been plastered on the front of the car the whole trip. And finally, when I stopped at the red light, the pigeon was like, flap, 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 and flew off to the side of the road. But the poor thing had been on the grill of the car for miles. As I was going along the highway, the pigeon was stuck to the front of the car. I didn't realize it until I got to the red light. And the poor bird's like, flap, flap. So I go into work the next day, and it was the early 70s, and people who had bought Chevy Vegas were getting angry at them and chopping them up with axes and stuff. Probably one of the worst cars that General Motors ever built. And this guy, Harold and Jimmy, both had Vegas. And they were going down Goody Drive on the way to work. Our trucks were parked at the dump, the Rockville dump. And they were taking the Vegas and banging the Vegas into each other as they went down the road and laughing like Jack Nicholson, like they were idiots out of their minds. But they were smashing the Vegas into each other as they were going to work in them. And Harold and I would be on the truck. And you got to remember, I was a young boy compared to all these other older men I worked with. Hard men. Hard men that all day long carried a couple 100 pounds of garbage on their backs and worked out in the cold and the heat and the everything, in the rain. Hard men. And he would come up behind me and he would grab me and he would pick me up. And while I was screaming and kicking, he would try and put my legs into the garbage truck and then reach over and pull the handle for the blade to come down on me. He thought that was funny as smack. Can you imagine if he had dropped me or slipped and not been able to cut the truck off in time? That blade would have come down and cut me in half. But he thought that was the funniest thing. And these guys, man, they had muscles that were rock hard. And when I was a little boy and I worked on the garbage truck, the driver would beat the ever-loving crap out of me if I could not pick up enough garbage or pick it up fast enough. And so all of the garbage was in the basement of these apartments. You went to work and it was dark out, 6 o'clock in the morning, and we went to this little diner, and my uniform was brown coveralls, and the lady said I looked like a baked potato in the brown coveralls, and she used to call me Tater. She'd say, "God darn it, Tater, you in here eating again, boy?" You know, and she didn't have any teeth. "You in here again, Tater?" And in any case, the guy who owned the restaurant didn't like me. I didn't like him back. And so one morning, he hated this Freddie Fender song. I put 10 dimes in the jukebox and I pressed the Freddie Fender song 10 times. And so the first time it played, Gus looked really irritated. He was at the grill. And then the second time the song played, he looked really angry. The third time it started to play, he didn't ask who did it or whatever. He came around and he grabbed me and he shoved me into the Hostess cupcake display. And I went down on the floor with the display and I mushed into all these Twinkies and cupcakes and ho-hos. And he told me, "Get out of here." So I went to work on the truck. It was very difficult for a young boy. And the barrel was a 120-gallon barrel. And it was bigger than me at the time. So when I went down the stairs, it looked like the barrel was going down the stairs by itself. Young little kid working with these guys that were like late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you know, hard, roughneck guys. And they had all these scars on their backs because back then the garbage wasn't in plastic bags, it was put raw. And so people would dump the garbage raw into the cans and they would put lime on it to sweeten it, take away the smell and keep the flies down. When you carried it on your back, the lime and the garbage rubbed into your skin and gave you these horrible sores on your back that looked like you'd been whipped. And so I used to wear a raincoat top with my coveralls, so I looked like a real dork with these brown coveralls and a yellow raincoat top. And then the garbage juice would run down the raincoat top into the crack of my butt. And I was always ashamed when we would stop to eat. I would never go into the restaurant, you know, because I was ashamed of smelling and and working on the garbage truck and all that other stuff. But my driver would, well, he beat me one time because I was smart. I went down to the basement of this apartment and I tipped all the cans real quick to find out which ones were light and which ones are heavy. So I dumped all the light ones into my barrel. It was strictly survival at that point for a young kid. So my driver noticed that every other can was empty, and he figured out I was leaving the heavy stuff for him. So what he did was he uh packed my barrel, and then he hopped in it and stomped the stuff down and compacted it so that it was good and heavy, over 200 pounds for a young boy to pick up. And so I picked it up, and the muscle in my hand tore. You can see it's still floppy. It almost tore my thumb off to carry the barrel of garbage, and my hand tore. So I went into the laundry room of the apartment and I put the barrel on top of a washing machine and had to bandage my hand with something. I took a rag or something, wrapped it around my hand to keep my hand together. And while I was doing that, the trash decompacted and it pushed its way into the drop ceiling. So when I went to back up and pull the barrel off of the washing machine, it wouldn't come. And so I started to cry. I had all these hot tears coming down, and I went, "Rah!" and grabbed the barrel, and I literally was like screaming up the stairs, "Rah!" like a ninja garbage man. Went to the truck and threw it in. And the second I threw it in and I was exhausted, the driver pulls the truck up to the next stop, and I had to walk up to the next hole, they called it. He didn't play. So, yeah, and it was hot as hell that day. And he decided to take us to McDonald's. And they had a meal deal that was 2 quarter pounders, a large fry, and 2 drinks for $2.22. So he went in. I wouldn't go in because I smelled. And he parked the truck next to the dumpster. So you had the garbage truck, the dumpster, the hot sun, 2 smelly garbage men. So he opened up the door and handed me the food and the drinks. "Don't drop it, boy." And he got into the truck and he handed me my quarter pounder. And then he took some of the fries and he dumped it on the dashboard of the garbage truck that had fly eggs and hair and all this crap and dirty garbage gloves up on the dash. And he dumped my fries on the dash of the truck. And so I always use the wrapper to eat my food, because when you got off of a garbage route, it took like a half hour to scrub your hands clean, all under the fingernails and stuff. So I'm sitting there eating my hamburger with the wrapper on it and drinking my soda, and the dirt is running down the side of the soda from my dirty hand. And he looks at me and he said, "Ain't you eat your fries, boy?" I was like, "No." And both of us were starving. He knew I was starving because I wasn't getting anything to eat other than what he was giving me and what customers would give me from time to time. And so he knew I was starving. And then he goes, "Oh, gee, damn it. Why you got to be that way, boy?" And he took the back of my head and he smashed my face into the dash of the garbage truck and ran it back and forth and back and forth. And I had salty French fries up my nose and in my eyes, and it burned. It burned having the salty French fries all up in my nose and my eyes. And I looked real sad. I looked a mess, I can tell you. And abusers, they always say, well, why did you make me do that to you? They never blame themselves. They're always like, well, why did you make me do that to you? So he pulled me to him, and my ear stuck to his sweaty, smelly, hairy chest. I could literally hear his heartbeat. And he's there holding me, and he's lamenting that I made him have to discipline me. And my ears literally stuck to the sweat on his chest. And that kind of thing. And then we would go back to his place for the time that I spent at his place. And I would try and hop in the shower real quick and take a shower before he decided to come in and not waste the water and shower. So I always showered real quick. And, you know, you got ready for bed right away or fell asleep on the sofa. And one night I was so tired, I fell asleep on the sofa sitting up, and he shook me awake. Get up, time to go back to work, 2:30 in the morning, and I had fallen asleep sitting up on the sofa. Not pretty for a young kid. But I took care of myself. I didn't do drugs because I had to depend on myself. Worked hard, and my mother got sick. She had a fight with my father. When all of this trouble first started in the 70s, of the real violent trouble, I got my father a police canister of mace because his neighbors, an elderly couple, were eating their breakfast, and this young person broke into their house and robbed them and tied them up. And then on top of it, he poured their hot coffee from breakfast over top of the couple, to show his contempt for an elderly couple that had worked hard all their lives and were finally retired and enjoying the fruits of their labors. And that made the young person angry, that they would dare to be relaxing, eating their breakfast in the privacy of their home. So he tied them up, robbed them, and then poured the coffee over the elderly couple. My parents were horrified because it was only a mile down the road from where they lived. And so I got my father this big canister of mace, and that wouldn't do it for him. He wanted a GUN. So I said, okay, I'll get you one. So there was a guy who retired from the Men in Black from the government, and he had a single shot 45. And so I took my father up to his apartment to buy it. And my father, instead of concealing it on his way out to the car, he walked out like he was brandishing it, in full view. I said to myself, bad mistake you made, Will. Bad mistake. So long story short, my father put the GUN between his mattress on my mother's side of the bed. Lovely guy. He put the GUN in between the mattress, but on my mother's side of the bed. My niece changed her little baby on the bed and soiled it. And so they had to pull the blankets and sheets off the bed to change it. And when they pulled the sheets off the mattress, the GUN came and fell on the floor, pointed at my niece and her baby. And my mother went off. So they had an argument. My mother had a stroke and a heart attack. And so when I heard about it, obviously I wanted to come by and pay my respects and visit. And my family said, you got to stay away. You will upset her. And she's already in bad shape. They didn't take her to the hospital. She had the heart attack on Wednesday. They didn't take her to the hospital till Sunday. So she was bedridden from the heart attack. I decided to show my respects by buying the most expensive color TV with remote, which back then was unheard of. $468 color TV for her bedroom. My mother passed. I never got to say goodbye. I was still a young kid. I was still a teenager. And the internet timed out. So I got to reset it. It only gives you 15 minutes at a time here, unless you like squiggle the screen a little bit and then it reboots. I forgot to squiggle the screen. So my mother passed. My father didn't keep the TV. He gave it to my sister, who tried to stab me and gut me like a fish. When I was 11 years old, my sister had given my mother $20 towards her bills. My mother disrespected her by saying, oh, $20. And she gave it to me. I was a little kid at that time. I was 11. You give an 11-year-old kid $20, they're like, wow, thank you. They don't care where it came from. That made my sister outrageously angry. And she cornered me in the kitchen and put a knife to my belly and threatened to gut me like a fish. But she wasn't upset when my father gave her my brand new $468 TV that I was still making payments on. Normally, when you give something and the person doesn't keep it, they're supposed to return it back to you so you can get your money back or whatever, but Buck didn't do that. So my mother passed, and I went to her funeral with this prostitute, an escort. She wasn't the run-of-the-mill hooker. She was like that movie. She was a high-dollar call girl. Very nice, very beautiful. She looked like Helen Crump from the Andy and Mayberry show. And there was nothing sexual between she and I. She was a shoulder to cry on and a piece of eye candy for my family to show them that I had made it, that I had a pretty girl on my arm. I never told people my business. Like when I would visit my parents every so often, I never told them I was sleeping in the car. And my father came out and he said, oh my God, you bought the biggest thing that you could buy. I didn't tell him I was sleeping in it. So we pull up to the church. My mother had walked out of the Catholic Church in 1973 because of Roe versus Wade. She walked out and never went back. She bought the lie that a baby was just a clump of cells. Turned her back on her church. And so for for some cheese. They funeralized her. They got her name wrong. The priest was wearing a black kilt with a green t-shirt, smoking a cigarette when we pulled up. Total disrespect. My brother was laughing like an idiot, like Jack Nicholson. I told him, I said, I'm going to have to slap you if you don't get it together, because we were lead pallbearers. So, buried my mother. I never got to say goodbye. I went back a few days later to have quiet time by her gravesite by myself. I stepped too close to the new grave and sunk up to my knees in dirt, in a soft spot. And that terrified me. And I literally had to sit on the edge and pull my legs out of the grave, out of the soft spot. And that freaked me out. And that combined with the thing that happened when I went back to visit my father with the fly up my nose. Those were the only times that I went to their gravesite. My father's in heaven. He got born again when he was 77, which is very unusual to be born again that late. So I will see my father. I will see my father. I got to send me mano derecha. It amazes me. I got 7 phones because I use them as a studio for my YouTube channel. And it's always I pick the wrong one when I'm trying to get something done. So I have a backup to the backup. And I have a backup to the backup. And I have 2 different cellular services. I have Boost, and I have Boost, and I have Track Phone. So when all the cell phones went down, I still had a phone that worked out of the 2. I used to use Consumer Cellular. I used them for a year and a half. I was prompt pay. They say that they're month to month, which is a lie. When I gave them my credit card, they automatically billed it, which they did not have permission to do. Because when you're using a debit card, you want to make sure that the money's there so that when they go to charge the money, you don't get a $35 penalty for an overdraft. So I called them up. I said, I'm month to month. I will up the service when I have the money on the card. I never gave you permission to auto bill my card. The lady was very snobby and nasty. I said, I've been prompt pay for a year and a half with your company. You'll get your money. So, and they had a real dumb racist commercial where the old elderly couple says, we got to tell everybody about Consumer Cellular, how great it is. And so what do? They get into a canoe and they paddle out to the center of a lake to tell one guy in a fishing boat about Consumer Cellular. And then they're in town and they're walking along the sidewalk, looking like a couple of dangerous freaks, telling everybody about Consumer Cellular. And they go into an African American barbershop Watch the commercial for yourself. White, elderly white couple walks into an African American barber shop, and they tell the barber, "Well, you probably got a flip phone," insinuating that the guy is not smart enough to use a smartphone. And the guy looks at him. The African American barber looks at him like, "Did y'all just have a stroke, or were you dropped on your head?" He said, "I got a smartphone," and he looks really annoyed. It's a dumb racist commercial, and I can't believe I can't believe whoever gave the okay to run that commercial. You want to tell everyone about consumer cellular, so you paddle to the middle of a lake and talk to one guy who's fishing on a boat. Okay, so used them for a year and a half, and I used to get insomnia, so I would play these scriptures to music at night. What I didn't realize, it was eating up my data, even though the internet where I'm at is part of my rent. Consumer Cellular was charging me a data fee to import that on my phone. So I get this real nasty email that said that I went over my service by 1 gig. So they slowed it down to where I only had a boat anchor for a cell phone, worthless for anything, wouldn't do anything, couldn't get the internet, nothing, and no notice. And I got this nasty email that said I went over my service by 1 gig. They were charging me for it. The service was cut off, and if I did it again, they would cut my service off for good. So I called them up. I said, "What way is this to treat a customer?" I said, "For one thing," I said, "the other company has got 30 gigs of service for less money than your company." And the very nasty lady on the phone said, "Yes, that's right." She said she didn't even use consumer cellular. So, in any case, we couldn't reconcile things. I said, "I will pay you the $45 overdraft fee for 1 gig over 20 gig service." And so they said, "No, uh, you got to cancel exactly on the day that the service comes due. If you cancel now, we won't cancel it in the future. We'll cancel it now. You got to pay for the whole month plus the 45, and plus they cut the service right off." Oh, that's really fair. And we went back and forth. I said, "Just cut it off and I will send you $45. I said, "I am not sending you $268 to overcharge me for this 1 gig and to charge me for a full month because you have to have notice." Nowhere did it say I had to give them a month's notice in advance and pay for a month and a half plus $45. Ain't gonna happen. So I offered over and over and over again to pay the $45. Eventually, Consumer Cellular added more service to their plan. I was already out the door, and they slammed my credit report saying that I defaulted on $268, which was a lie. Absolute lie, you know. And they're right back to their cheesy commercials saying how wonderful they are and all that. But if you go to the internet and you look up their number of stars that they have, it's nowhere near a 5-star service. It's nowhere near. And there are plenty of other people that got hosed by them. You know, I've learned in life that when somebody has a commercial and it says that when you go to 7-Eleven, and it says you're not going to wait in line for a half hour to check out, or you go to this place or that place, it's exactly the opposite, and that they're telling people that they're not going to have to wait in line forever when they know that's a problem with their service. So, and I never go to self checkout because of the thing where people check out and then they'll take one last item and scan it and then put it in the thing and leave the store. So the next person that uses a self checkout, you'll notice it says scan next item without starting over. You have to pay very close attention, because if you go up and it just says scan next item without saying hello and going through the menu, you're paying for the person in front of you's last item. And if you don't, you can go to jail. I saw a person who got shaken down for an item that they had not purchased. And the cops were called and all that because of somebody else's dishonesty. So, yeah. This lady got my father that way. She said that she was lonely and for my father to call her daughter, you know. And so, long story short, in the checkout line, she was in front of my father at checkout, and she said put her groceries along with my dad's, and he would pay for it. She was his daughter, so naturally, he says bye, daughter. She goes out the door, and then when he rings his stuff up 10 minutes later, and he gets double the bill, she said, well, your daughter said you're paying for both of you all. If somebody came to me and said, call me your daughter, I would realize something was fishy, and I would say, I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't do that, because something's up. But my dad fell for it. She got him. He called her daughter, and then the clerk's like, well, why would you call the lady daughter if she wasn't your daughter? you know, and it made him look like a fool, and you can't call the cops. He agreed to what she asked him. So, that kind of stuff. It's a shame that you got to be on your toes in this world. You got to really be on your toes. Speaking of being on your toes, fam, I got to go. I got to check my vitals again to see if I need some more heart pills or nose drops or ear drops or eye drops or preparation H or, all that stuff. All that stuff that you need when you're the better part of a century old. I'm careful about stuff. And I appreciate all of you who send me the little bit of jingling through PayPal and send me diapers and old people piddle pads through my Amazon link. God will bless you for it. Because the powers that be cut my benefits back $294 so that they could stretch the benefits and give them to somebody else who just came in the country. I mean, I worked and paid taxes and all that other stuff for over half a century. But they take a little bit from each of us to give to people coming into the country so they can give them free phones and free credit cards and plane trips and bus tickets and hotel rooms. And they think that these people are going to be so grateful that they're going to be Democrats forever. And they don't realize that the people coming into the country are mostly Muslim. And as soon as there is a majority Muslim uh, amount of people in America that are Muslim, this country is going to be Muslim. And it's going to be Sharia law. And it's going to be, ladies, you better cover your hair. And they're not going to want you to drive or go to school. And if you're a homosexual, don't dare march in one of their free Palestine parades like the guy made the mistake. And he marched in a free Palestine parade with the gay pride flag. They grabbed the flag from the guy, stomped it on the ground, set it on fire, and then beat the ever-loving crap out of the guy. You know, and we're importing that into our country. Over in Pakistan, they throw homosexuals off the top of buildings, or they string them up on cranes and they let them hang there as an example to the rest of the population. So these people in Washington, like Jerry Nadler, who says that they need immigrants to dig up his vegetable garden so his vegetables don't rot in the ground, they got a surprise coming, because there's already Muslim no-go zones in America. There's Minnesota, there's New York has no-go zones, and in my area and all, you have a noise zone until 7 o'clock in the morning. You're not supposed to have any noise or make any noise. So we have the garbage truck comes at 4 a.m. And then we have a neighbor that opens up the door and yells the Muslim call to prayer at 5:30 a.m. So no chance of oversleeping here. And more neighborhoods are doing that. You can't have Christian churches ring their bells like they used to. You know, hear the bells ringing, they're singing, we have been born again, none of that stuff. It's all the at 5:30 in the morning. The one guy did it on a jet. He stood up and he did the Muslim call to prayer, and everybody on the plane panicked because they thought that he was doing his last rites before he was going to try and down the plane. So that didn't work out too well. It panicked everybody. But what they're doing now in our government, they're taking all of the guardsmen and soldiers and they're shipping them off out of the country to different WAR zones. And then they're importing these illegals that they don't know who they are or where they came from. And they're importing them into the military and into the police and all. And you're going to have more Fort Hood incidents, which was a T attack. And the guy went through Fort Hood yelling, Allahu Akbar, our God is greater, and capped 13 people and captain wounded an overall 42 people. That was courtesy of Billy Clinton, because Billy Clinton, his administration did not allow military bases to have weapons out and about. So while this guy at Fort Hood capped all these people, yelling Allah Akbar, they're like, We can't figure out what the motivation is. And God said in the last days that people would be ever learning but never coming to the truth. Deceived and being deceived. That's exactly where we are in history right now, under the judgment thumb of God. And so the admin didn't come out with the truth. And anytime it's a white shooter, anytime the person is white, you get an instant picture and address and everything about the guy. When it's a person of color, that doesn't fit their narrative. And so you don't get the name, you don't get what the guy looked like or any of that. And the admin said that it was workplace violence. They didn't say that it was religious, teism, you know. And of course, for you trolls, you can't say the whole word on YouTube without getting the smackdown. So don't tell me, Will, you're not saying it right or you're not spelling it right. You know daggone good and well what I'm talking about. But they're importing all of these people in. Now we have all of these diseases, African pox, cholera, plague, tuberculosis, polio. All of this stuff is making a comeback. And then you have somebody like the one lady who got on channel during her mukbang, and she said, "Well, thank you very much, anti-vaxxers. Thank you very much, anti-vaxxers. What about all of the people pouring into this country that don't have the jab, and they're sitting on planes with you and stuff? You know, one guy DIED'd recently. He had something really bad, and he was sitting on a plane with everybody else, and he passed away before he landed, just like that Planet of the Apes movie. So it's a mess. It's absolutely a mess. I believe the word of God where Jesus said if he didn't come back in time, that nobody would survive this. And I believe 2024 is going to be a real rough year, fam. So you better hang on to your hats and fasten your seatbelt. Poppity pops out.